Every time I walk in the door, I'm always happy to be here. It's fun to bring a poetry event like this, to bring energy and to bring a new arts and cultural event to folks who wouldn't normally have access to it. When the Poetry Slam took off, it allowed folks like me, who never took a poetry class in their lives, who didn't go to college, who failed creative writing in high school. It gave us an opportunity to write and to express ourselves and to work on an artistic craft and share it with like-minded people.
I think I have an obligation as an artist, as a community artist, to start implementing a little bit more social messages, or at least give a reflection of our surroundings through my work.
A lot of our books are from the 18th century, which would be the 1700s. More in the past than today, books have had a lot of art applied to them. The design, the layout, sometimes the older books have designs impressed into the cloth.
Eye on the Arts is made possible with support from South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, a state agency, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Emerging from the nightclubs and dive bars of 1980s Chicago, the Poetry Slam transformed the scholarly readings of academia into a competitive performance and voice for the people the world over. In an age of emojis and LOLs, the Lubeznik Center's annual Poetry Slam has shown that the art and expression of poetry haven't gone anywhere.
The Poetry Slam is the combination of great writing and great performance put together. It's a performance poetry show. A lot of times that competition is involved, where we score people and all the things that we've talked about, and it's, you know, Olympic style scoring and everything. But the competition is just one small part of what the Poetry Slam actually is as a whole. I always say it's not about the scores. The idea of the scores is to make it more fun for the audience. It's just an opportunity for the audience to feel more invested in what's happening. If you're following along and you're kind of watching the scoring happen, it creates investment from the audience, and it also makes it a little more fun. That basic human instinct to rate things and to create a game of stuff, I think that's really common. If you put a score on anything, people will watch it and bet on it and wear t-shirts with your name on it.
Should I give up, or should I just keep chasing sidewalks, even if they lead nowhere?
I would say slam poetry is more like improv, but with slam, because there's a point component to it, right? You have to have some type of strategy to give you the best chance at winning. So not only am I working on my art, but I'm also trying to figure out, okay, who's judging me? Who's gonna be the audience tonight? What is the audience looking for? What does the room need? Because if the room gets too dark and I do something funny, I'm probably gonna get a higher score because they don't want to be depressed anymore.
But as coffee jitters were off, I realized that our conversations were not like gravy, but they were like oatmeal. And they stuck with me throughout the day.
I fell in love with poetry when I was teaching in Phoenix. I was teaching at a Title I school, and I got into Poetry Slam. Some friends saw that I liked to just, write, and encouraged me to get on a mic, and it was just a great opportunity for me just to grow as a presenter and as a person.
My mother was a dancer, my father was in the theater, and so I grew up in the performance environment, and I've always been amazed by it, particularly when a certain performance moves me some way. My whole life I've been battling stage fright. Had a bad experience when I was like 12 years old performing in a coffee house. I've been telling people that poetry has been kind of my gateway drug back into performing, because it's just me up there speaking, which is a lot simpler than trying to remember chords and lyrics and stage presence and all this other stuff that goes on with performing. So for me, it was much easier just to get up there and speak from my heart and tell my story through poetry. Because I can do this, I can create my own flow, and yet these words and these beats, they just come out too slow. I try to sound cool, sound dope, sound fat, but come off like some wannabe just reciting some Cat in the Hat. There's a simplicity in poetry that I absolutely adore. Hopefully, poets who do perform because they want to be able to bare their soul to you, so that perhaps they can touch your soul and you can realize what's going on for you and start battling your own demons or whatever it is.
It can be seen as a form of therapy. It's a way of expression. We live in a world where people are afraid to express themselves for who they truly are. Facebook profiles and Instagrams put filters on it so you can filter things out so you look happier than you really are. Is that truly expression, or are you just using an app? Like, how do you really want to express yourself? And I think you'll be healthier and happier if you're expressing your true self rather than the person you think the world wants you to be. With painting, you kind of hang it up and you hope someone asks you about what you painted. But when you're saying it, people have to open their ears and ask you about what did you mean for that. And that allows you to talk about, okay, this is what I meant, this is where I'm trying to go, and this is what I want to see.
Every time I walk in the door, I'm always happy to be here. And it's fun to bring a poetry event like this, to bring energy and to bring a new arts and cultural event to folks who wouldn't normally have access to it. When the Poetry Slam took off, it allowed folks like me, who never took a poetry class in their lives, who didn't go to college, who failed creative writing in high school. It gave us an opportunity to write and to express ourselves and to work on an artistic craft and share it with like-minded people. And the slam has traveled all over the world. It started in Chicago and now it's in pretty much every country where speaking out loud is legal. There's a poetry slam. And it's not an accident. It ignites people, it excites people, brings some thrust to a language that we've forgotten about. And people say poetry is dead, but poetry isn't dead. There are people coming from all over the world gathering together to share words with each other and be on stage, and that's an important thing.
In the 1980s, rail cars rolling in from the east brought a message to the train yards of East Chicago. Tags and murals of New York and Philadelphia graffiti artists caught the eye of a young Felix Maldonado and captured his imagination. Developing into a multidisciplined artist, including commercial marketing, video production, and public murals with a social conscience, he seems always to come back to the aerosol can.
When I was 5 years old, I started painting, coloring books, drawing anywhere, and get in trouble for it. I was an artist, of course, before the graffiti art movement came around, which is good for me because I learned a lot of the basics of art. Once the graffiti movement came around, I just found it very exciting, inspirational, and something new. As a kid, you know, we used to go into the marshes and the prairies and build clubhouses and go fishing. So we had to cross tracks and get in there to go do all that. And in doing so, I started seeing some of these tags and then what became elaborate names painted on the trains, which got me thinking, what's going on? Obviously, it was coming from the east, from New York, Philly. That's how my interest and my passion in that sense of work came about. Aside from just doing portraits and landscapes, that was something unique and different and new. And again, it was, well, illegal, which made it a little more exciting. As a kid, of course, being called Felix by day and Flex by night makes it kind of cool. That's probably where it all started. I went to college at the American Academy of Art, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and graphic design. And from there, I got picked up by an ad agency by the name of Grant Jacoby as an intern. Went up the ladder to become an art director, produced a couple commercials, a lot of print work, radio, which was very fun. At one point, I was running around with the latest clothes. You know, I had a nice condo in the city with my girlfriend, and you know, I had the nice car. And 9/11 hit. So with a lot of companies, unfortunately, this company folded as well. So that left me basically in a state of like shock because I felt I was already set in my way and planning to retire with what I'm doing. And honestly, I think I pretty much forgot art. You know, in some weird way, it kind of helped me getting laid off and finding myself again and saying, okay, what are you going to do now? Strip me back down to who I really was. And that from there, I opened up my own business. It really transformed me in a way that after everything was said and done and the dust settled, I said, what are you doing, Flex? That's not you. You know, this is not you. This is not you. So it helped me. It helped me basically get in touch with myself again and say, okay, man, don't ever let this happen to you anymore. Use your talents, utilize them wisely, and go for it. So. At my age, and I'm just speaking personally, at my age, I think I have something more that I need to offer. I think I have an obligation as an artist, as a community artist, to start implementing a little bit more social messages, or at least give a reflection of our surroundings through my work, as opposed to just doing graffiti. In the case of murals and outdoor work, I'm very conscious that people will be watching, which is why I choose my battles wisely, and I choose the spaces that are going to be where I'm going to be painting with care and time. As I moved in and I settled in a couple years ago, I had to get an understanding of who was around me because I was going to do this mural. Being the new neighbor in town, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers or rattle any cages. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I put up would be aesthetically pleasing, at least, you know. I started primering my wall, and in doing so, this car pulled up and this gentleman jumped out. He says, I'm the director for a battered women's shelter. I really would like to put something positive so that they can wake up to something positive every day. I saw this gate as a cage, and I figured, wow, that'd be kind of cool because I have these butterflies already, and I could incorporate that into my mural so it becomes sort of a 3D deal. So when the doors are open and the cage is open, it looks like these butterflies are coming out. That Saturday, I finished the painting. I came on Sunday to do some touch-ups to it. As I'm on the ladder in the morning, I'm finishing up, and I'm all sunburnt from the day before. I'm tired, you know, long day. I'm painting it, and I hear in the distance, I hear a bunch of clapping. And I'm like, what's going on? So I turn around, there's about 12, 13 women waving hi to me.
Author Stephen King once said, "Books are a uniquely portable magic. Through a few words on a page, you are taken to far-off places and meet a host of interesting characters." In Chesterton, Doug Wilson of O'Gara and Wilson Booksellers keeps an eclectic stock of everything from fiction and fantasy to history and hobbies. As you cross the threshold of the shop, you can feel the tradition and history that is kept within its walls and between the pages.
As a reader, I think what I most love about books is how it can transport you. We have many senses, we have our senses, and I think we're best when we can be using all of them full guns. With a book, that can happen. When you read a book, a whole world is created in your mind. I have been a bookseller for 45 years. I started in 1972. The bookstore was established in 1882. There was a Mr. Donahue in the 1890s who was a bookseller of Chicago. He took on an apprentice in the 1920s, by the name of Jerry Nedwick. Jerry Nedwick came to the point where he took on an apprentice in 1936, Joseph O'Gara, and then in 72, Joseph O'Gara took on me as an apprentice. After 5 years, it became not Joseph O'Gara Bookseller, but O'Gara and Wilson Booksellers. We'd been established in the University of Chicago community. Mr. O'Gara had come there sometime in the 60s and moved to a couple different locations. We moved here 3.5 years ago, and we've never regretted it. We've been embraced by the community. It's been a very good 3 years, and we hope to continue for the foreseeable future. I remember when I first was looking at old books, I went out with a college mate of mine who was actually a bookseller in his spare time. And in and amongst his stock was a book printed in about 1910. And I'd never seen a book that looked anything like it. It was cloth covers, but imprinted upon the cloth covers was a design of a Japanese woman and some beautiful cherry blossoms on the side. And I said, "What is this?" And he says, "Oh, that's an older book. That's an antique book." And that sort of got me started. Typically, I think when you talk about antiques, it used to be if something is 100 years old, it begins to be thought of as an antique. And it's out of phase with the way things are done today enough at that point to where it does stand out and it can be seen as something other. In the back, we have cases where we put older books that are bound in leather or vellum, which is another type of leather. And some of them date back to the 1520s, 1530s. A lot of our books are from the 18th century, which would be the 1700s. I think a few months ago we had a book that was printed in Paris in 1507, and that was probably our oldest book. They look very, very different, and very often the typefaces are very difficult for modern readers to read, even if the book is in English. Some people, it takes a while to get comfortable with them when you're handling and reading them. More in the past than today, books have had a lot of art applied to them. Most people are familiar with modern books and the dust jacket art. But even before then, the design, the layout, sometimes the older books have designs impressed into the cloth. There's a lot of art that's put into books. I have learned over the years certain methods to clean them, to restore them, to repair them. And this actually gives me an outlet for my sort of need to make things better and to craft things. And I do quite a bit of restoration of books. Books come in here and they usually don't go back out into the world. If they need some improvement and some cleaning and some restoration, I will do that before we put them up for sale. Well, I have been told that by some that books are over and that they are a dying art. I don't agree with that. I believe that they will always have a certain place in people's lives. There are fewer used bookstores, fewer new bookstores than there used to be 15, 20 years ago. But those people will go out of their way to find those of us that still exist. As I say, the future in the used book trade, I think, there will be bookstores, fewer bookstores, but I think there'll always be a place for them. It's hard to get young people, however, to think of a used bookstore as a rising business, something they want to hitch their wagon to. The hope is that there'll be enough to do, and there won't be that break in the culture which would break that connection to the past. I think that unbroken tradition is very important, and I hope that there'll be enough people that think of it as something they'd like to do with their lives. A used bookstore, or a new bookstore for that matter, is a smorgasbord of unimagined delights. You're going to find things that you couldn't have even conceived might exist. That's one of the last things we can do that the internet can't do, is we can present you with things that you didn't even know existed, and that you can just sort of go from one to another discovering and exploring. And we want to have some book for anybody who might come in. And we do the best we can at achieving that.
Chicago Imagism is a late 1960s art movement that emerged from artists associated with the Art Institute of Chicago, who drew influences from surrealism, outsider art, and popular culture. Chicago Imagism has earned its place in art history by standing out from the iconic pop art of its time, and by treading its own path as a whimsical and open-ended form of artistic expression.
Well, you'd be talking about the second half of the 1960s. And so turbulent times in the country, a lot of unrest going on, and a lot of redefining of roles and customs or aspects of society. Also, too, in the art world, pop art was coming into some popularity or some recognition as being kind of an effective summary statement for the climate of the time period. The way we typically understand it, the pop art coming from New York, they were thinking of art as something of a product, something that you could buy, something that captured the popular culture feel, but also captured this kind of consumer vibe. Now, Chicago Imagism also embraced images drawn from popular culture, and certainly had a lot of pop references in the work. I think, though, that Chicago Imagism, in its focus or its emphasis, was more on kind of a personal perspective, this sort of whimsical engagement, as opposed to kind of an ironic detachment that you'd see in New York pop. Now, the first group would have been the Harry Who, and the Harry Who centered around the School for the Art Institute of Chicago and also the Hyde Park Art Center, work getting a lot of attention. Now, the second wave after that, I think, was the false image group. Then you got into the nonplussed sum, kind of waves, differing somewhat in their stylistic concerns, but still common enough that a viewer could look at this overall grouping of artists from these three separate phases and say, yeah, there's a style here. I would say that probably the three that have broken into this kind of international fame, or at least countrywide fame, would be Ed Paschke, Jim Nutt, and Roger Brown. And I think, too, that they endure as particularly sharp or clear examples of the style. All the various aspects or elements seem to be present to a high degree with those three. References to popular culture, refined style, surreal juxtapositions, sometimes disturbing psychological content, those kinds of things. I think that Imagism was revolutionary in its time period, enduringly popular, enduringly interesting, and poised now for maybe for a rebirth of popularity. People that encounter this work that seems so directly arising from a non-art context or art, illustration more context, and then saying, like, what is this doing here, kind of? When it gets into this realm, it's bringing up these things that are visceral and bodily and unpleasant. And how are we supposed to view all this? So I think there's an enduring pushback, but also, like with any sort of revolutionary movement, eventually you get to the point where you say, well, it was also new and novel at the time, but it did bring up some interesting ideas that continue to bear fruit or yield options for exploration or discussion.
Eye on the Arts is made possible with support from South Shore Arts, the Indiana Arts Commission, a state agency, and the National Endowment for the Arts.